So
Yep.
give me, in Cliff Notes version of that journey to that point.
Oh boy, I'm old, so Cliff Notes, huh? Um, but writers are supposed to make things smaller, right? So let me see what I can shrink. Um, what's interesting is I like as a little kid or as a young person, like age 6 or 5, like I was really into writing and the sounds of like Shel Silverstein and like
Yeah, yeah,
I cannot go to school today, said little Peggy Ann McKay, like all of those kind of like, and I loved all of that stuff. So I found that truly like enchanting. And then, so I started writing because I wanted to play with that. And then I got one of the best and worst, like motivators or incentives to write, which was I won some contests. Like, and for a writer, like, then you're like, well, that's all I want, glory, right?
right.
Connecting with people. I mean, that's great, right? No, and so that was just sort of where I went. But I was recently thinking about like where the impulse came to publish and where like the sort of other big parts of what I've done and do in my career come from. And that also came from when I was in like third or fourth, I might have been in second or third grade. A friend of mine and we were kind of the weirdos, and she and I were kind of like intellectual good friends. And so we started a magazine, and it was called, and I'm going to try to see if you can locate the exact year or era of this. It was Super Kids Are Super People. That's
Wow.
a it's a winner, right?
How old were
That's like
you?
that would have probably been third grade. So we're
Wow.
talking like 80s
Yeah,
stuff, right? Like that's a very 80s.
yeah,
You had Dynamite magazine, you had all of these like, and you Scholastic, right? So books and reading were already kind of a thing that was collective because you sat at your desk and you had filled out your order form back in olden times before there was just the thing that you went to after your conferences or that was there like at Scholastic in your school. And so everybody would be getting books or magazines or whatever. So we started a magazine, and we actually had a ton of people. Like we had a kid who did the football scores because this was like the Steelers versus the Cowboys era, and that was very important to the third grade. And then so we had this is in Ohio. I'm in Ohio, so we didn't really have a team that we talked about because I was in Toledo, which it was if you don't pick Detroit and Cleveland. So okay, so that was like the thing. And then we had another kid who made mazes, right? And so like this was our magazine. So that's sort of where I first liked the idea of showcasing and kind of collecting the writing of other people. And that's sort of, I think, the more recognizable trend of my career of being a teacher, professor, I'm a very discussion based teacher. I talk a lot. So I always am like, believe it or not, I want other people to do it too. But like discussion based teacher, a lot of collaboration. And so while that writing, like especially like a lot of writing can be really isolating. So like I'll sit in this space, which is beautiful and great, but it's like I'm just looking at I'm very slow. I'm very like language driven. So it's really incremental, and I'm, fussing over words and stuff just doesn't move very fast for me. And so it's isolating. And so depending on the type of writing you're doing, that can be all by yourself. You might, if you're doing like something historical, like encounter librarians or archivists or something. And you do have to find a way to kind of get out in the world and like listen and observe. But so I think those two impulses of like, let's all get together and do stuff. And then like I gotta go write this thing. They come together, I think, with the press and with the other main way that I know that I've worked with Seaway before is through our Journal of the Arts, Sheepshead Review. That was the first way. And that was already established when I got to UWGB. So the press, which is the question you asked me, is sort of a pulling together of regional voices, undertold stories, and then also a way for students, undergraduates, to take part and talk to actual clients and authors, design the books, learn about copy editing, do the copy editing, make the style guide, all of that good stuff. And participate in that showcasing of voices that I think went all the way, at least for me, back to Super Kids or Super People. So yeah.
yeah. That's interesting. I mean, did you? There's so many pieces to that, like to be that organized, but also to give your time. In essence, to bring up the next generation. I mean, you are a teacher by trade, right? So it's kind of baked
Yeah.
in to your DNA, I guess you would say. but I mean, in terms of like your vision, I don't know how to ask this. Like, has it evolved the way that you envisioned that it would?
Oh goodness. Back when I was doing that editing thing, I didn't actually think I'd be an editor, which is so funny. Like, I guess I didn't think it was a job. I don't really know. Like, it just was, I was like a maker. So like, I just wanted to make stuff. And it didn't occur to me that that was a profession. Huh, maybe I should just start over. Hey, I guess I could do that. I love that stuff. Um, when I was that age, I wanted to be a vet. Everybody did, right? So I want to go be a veterinarian, and do that kind of stuff. And then I never wanted to be a teacher. I associated teacher with teaching with dealing with the pains in the tush in the classroom. And I didn't want to deal with that. And I was a shy kid for a very long time and was like, no, thank you. And but I had some really good teachers. It's not that I didn't have role models. It was just like I didn't want to have to deal with the idiocy and the kids making jokes and all that. Because I think junior high, I think middle school slash junior high, however, whatever year you came of age would be how you refer to it. That really has a deep effect. And so it's like I think there are a lot of people who make career choices about like, nope, I went through that in middle school. I'm not doing that now. Right. I mean, they still scare me, these middle schoolers. In any case, so then I got into college and had a really good school. I went to Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. I had some extremely good teachers. I wasn't a I mean, I was a student that could get by because I could write well. And I hated attending classes. So that's why all of my policies are like really mean about attendance, because I'm like, I see you out there, Rebecca Meacham. I know what you're going to try to get away with. I know how you do the points, right? I understand you. So then, right when I finished college, I didn't really know what I was going to do. Here were my options. My mom had become a lawyer late in life. She was like 41 when she finished law school. And so I had gone to classes with her from ages 8 to 11, right? So, and like, not that that was interesting, but that was like a path I could see. And I like to argue and I like to analyze. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go be a lawyer, or I'm going to go get my MFA in writing at Bowling Green State University, which is close to my home, which is where my boyfriend is, right? Like this was how much thinking I had
Sure,
done.
sure.
So the second that I get into my MFA program, I was a graduate assistant, which meant I was in charge of a class. They just hand it right over to you there, but they have a lot of mentorship. It's actually an extremely really good mentorship and support program for new teachers as well. And so I was in charge of my own composition class, and I really liked it because you had adults, you had people who like weren't going to make weird noises in class, or
Yeah.
weren't going to like, they weren't high school students or middle schoolers or anything. And I was like, oh, we can have conversations about stuff. And it got really interesting. And I was also like 3 years older than most of those students. So we all had like, we all knew the Simpsons episodes that I was referencing. Like I've been teaching long enough that I'm like, what do you guys call it? Like I have no idea what's current. So I would say that like I mean, there was an article once that came out of me right when my first book came out, and it was called The Accidental Professor. And I kind of like that because it was like, I didn't know I was going to do this forever, but it's really provided not just that next generation of writers, but my career is actually like I started off doing a lot more literature classes as well as creative writing and publications. And so where I don't do as much of that anymore because I'm doing the press and I'm doing all these other things, but where I'm still on Facebook with that first generation here for me. So I'd already been teaching about 12 years or 10 years by the time I got to GB, UWGB. I really feel most proud of the thinking that I helped do in like ethnic American literature classes, African American literature classes, just sort of like that was, I mean, that was the writing, absolutely, but like that part of it where students will be like, I just saw the world in a different way after I took your class. And I was like, all right,
Yeah.
that was a super fulfilling part of it. So yeah, but I never anticipated like any of this. And it, or like starting off as a lit and creative writing professor, and then here at GB, like, well, we need this class. Well, we need this class. Well, why don't we make this degree? Well, why don't we, make a press? Like those
Yeah.
things I would never have predicted from being hired in 2002.
Wow, that's really interesting. Like what, yeah, where was I guess at what point, because obviously like anybody, you're focused on your career and teaching and doing that. at some point, like there's that inspiration to, well, I guess again, being a teacher just kind of is a natural progression, right? But with the teaching press, what have you seen come out of it? Like what was missing for those students that, you're giving them through the journey with the teaching press?
Well, I'm going to back up a little bit and start with Sheepshead Review because that was here when I got here. And my literal job description was, among other things, revive the Sheepshead Review. So the Sheepshead Review is still currently, I'm wearing a shirt. I've got my merch on. It's the last
You're ready
issue.
to rock?
Yeah, published by CUA, right? Like this is
Love
printed
it.
rather. Yep. So that existed as like a student org, and student organizations are like ballroom dancing or the gamers club, like they're
Yeah.
whoever wants to do it whenever they can do it. But it's really hard to do that with a publication because like you need people to be invested in the grunt work of it and do things. So it existed, but it had been in and out of funding and in and out of consistency. So I had already had some experience running or like being in when I was in my MFA program. There was a class that you could take that gave you credits for working on that international journal of the arts that was Mid-American Review. And so I was like, what you need is an incentive. You need like a carrot and a stick for participation in the journal. You need professionalization. You need students to really feel like there's credits that go with this and then teach the context of the literary journal. But
Yeah.
also, if they don't do stuff, you need to be able to be like, that's a point thing. You have to like do accountability. So that's how like the press's very like origins would come from was me coming in saying, let's do a class, let's do it every semester. The cap, because we are a state university and worried about enrollment, I was given an enrollment cap. I had to have 25 students. And I was like, that is way too many people to make the chart. Like, what do you need to do all these people for? That's insane. But it actually worked really well because I needed to have stuff happen for those people. And people came in, the students, the origins of the teaching press come from those students on Sheepshead Review year after year, semester after semester saying, well, we could do a web page. Well, how do we change the web page? Okay, well, we could do it in color. We could do the journal in color.
Mhm.
How do we get the money for that? Right. And so it's just all of those incremental student by like generation by generation. We could have a contest. We could have a yearly contest. We could have celebrity judges, celebrity, with quotes, but
Sure.
like renowned people and artists, right? To judge artwork. We could go international, right? And so that then let me see not what was missing, but more the potential, right? We have these incredible, like savvy, willing to try anything students year after year. And they love books. They're readers. They're my writers. My readers, we have this great program, tons of faculty are really excellent, encouraging all of this. Let's see what we could do. And so a little ahead of time, like I thought, well, maybe we could do a press and print our own books. And then we had this windfall of cash that was stunning and never happens in a state university. And you're like, well, geez. And so the administration, the provost had said, okay, each kind of college can have a chunk of money and then you can apply for it. So I was like, well, I didn't mean to do this early, but like, let's go for it. Cause when will we ever have this option again? And so I got the grant, we got funded at about $29,000, which was pretty good. I'd asked for 36. And then that allowed me to have in-house teeny tiny micro press. I mean, it'd be cute if they were little machines, but what I mean is the number of machines is very small and they're very at that lower level. So we have a Ricoh um, copier, printer, whatever. And then we have a Duplo binder.
Yeah.
Again, the lowest end. I didn't know that. It didn't occur to me at the time when we were purchasing, like just one notch up in like skill set, and I could have that crease on the cover. But I didn't know that at the time, and now I wish I did. And then we have a guillotine trimmer, which everybody loves. And so we can make books in house, and then, but the whole idea of how could we do editorial? Do we have the ability to teach this? Do we have the ability to teach workflow? Do we have the ability to do that? I kind of had learned already from just the incredible talent we had going through an existing publication that I'd just been able to put into class form. So that's how it all came together. And now it's like I still am. I'm always catching up with the press because it's moving faster, and I am but a single person, and then I have a staff, but they are undergraduates. So it's not like I have a managing editor or a manager on staff that is like a person who knows what they're doing. Like I'm the one that's like I have to Google profit margins. Like I'm still understanding a lot of really
Yeah.
basic stuff about like, I don't know, business, right? And so, because that's not what I thought I'd be doing. As I said, like it's always like, well, here you are, now figure it out. But I've had really good support all over campus for this. Administratively, I've got really there's this person who's like our from the very beginning of the press. It started as a class, and I said we're going to launch a press. Like here we have a project. There's a trustee from the university who heard about the press, and he wants us to publish his book of poems. He was a businessman, Tim Weinberg. He had done a book of poems and illustrations, and he's like, I want to be your first. I want to be your first person. So we had this class, and from that very beginning, I invited in university legal, university accounting, because we're also like governed by a lot of a lot of specific state bureaucratic rules that are about
Sure.
printing in particular. And so from the very beginning, we've had like excellent support. So like this legal person on our in our university for all of university will like repost Facebook posts from the press. Like he's a supporter. And so that was also really great. So that as I'm, trying to figure out, will we get sued if we publish X, which is what I ask him all the time. He's also like really into what the students are doing. And that was another thing I'll just say, like in terms of that impulse of like pulling people together to collaborate on stuff, it never occurred to me how super useful it was for students to be, until I was doing it, to have students interacting with these top administrative people they'd never have a chance to,
Yeah.
at the university. And for those people to come and be like, not having to tell people no or do whatever can be difficult about their day, but get to talk about cool stuff with students. Like it was a really, the controller, the legal, they were like, yeah, let's talk about what you guys do. So it ended up being, that's how it's thrived. That's how it's been moving forward, in addition to our clientele and our authors who are lovely.
Yeah, that's really cool for that the young generation. Like, how do they see, like what kind of feedback do you get? We live in a world where digital is so heavy, right? And then you've got
Yeah.
this physical print aspect. What is their perspective, generally speaking? Like, what do you run into there? I mean, do they?
They love it. They love it. They absolutely love it. Like, I think this is the thing. I have been around long enough and through enough like university programs where print is dead is like the
Sure.
conversation all the freaking time. And
Yeah.
and I always want to say, what was the technology? The book. Do you know what was the new technology at one point? The pen, like the typewriter. Like a new technology doesn't necessarily wipe out the old technology. It's
Yeah.
just another way. And what I found is that again, after the most recent like yeah, like all, and there are reasons to be concerned, but people love the physical, the ability to open, to flip pages. They
Yeah.
still really like that. And I think now the difference will come. I think we'll really be able to see it with this. Like my kids are 15 and 16,
Okay.
and they've been through lockdown learning. They've been outside of a classroom in their own homes. My kids, that happened right around fifth, sixth, seventh grade, like in
Yeah.
there. And so it will be interesting to see their relationship with reading and technology, given the fact that they already had a time when they weren't in a school library looking through books or didn't have it the tactile. They still do, but I do notice in my younger child, she has gotten through like 100, what is it, 100, 400 years of solitude, whatever. I'm even messing up, this is terrible, and I'm an English professor and I'm blanking on the title. She got through a huge classic, but she also has this really short attention span. So if I try to show her something on video, she'll be like, how long is this? And I'll be like, it's 25 seconds. And she's, after the first 5 seconds, she's so angry about like
Right.
having to stick around. So I think that the young people right now, they love it. I'll be curious to see what happens in a few years or in 20 more years if I'm
Yeah.
still doing all of this. I think we're okay. I think they go to digital for different experiences, and they know that that's quicker and more immediate. I don't know that they really care deeply about reading and getting immersed there the same way that my younger daughter really like told me all about this book and can't wait to tell you about the next book. So I
Yeah.
think they can coexist. But I will also say this, they love working with the machines in the teaching press. So we did a whole run of a journal. It's the first time we were actually able to do a book in-house, like on our machines, since lockdown and stuff like that. So we were in the press room and we did this journal, a nature journal, an interactive wandering Topped Point. So Topped Point up in Door County, and illustrations from the Scientific Illustration Club on campus, and then like facts about nature and so forth. And we making that book, they like would stay for hours. A crew of them got into, what are the, how do we fix this problem with binding? We've done it, we got to redo the design, how
Yeah,
do we get the cover not like this way? They love that stuff. It's great. It's also like, I think, good for writers and readers to see how a book is made. They're
sure.
looking at the story, which is what we teach them so much of, or the symbolism, or like much cooler and more sophisticated stuff than that. But like you're looking at all of this type of world in the writing. And I think what I like about the press is we can connect them to manufacture olden time guilds, like,
Mhm.
like how you do it. And if it means, I can't wait, sometime we're going to do like learn Coptic stitching, we're going to do hand sewing of some types of books. Like that's another element that's not necessarily like brain work the same way, but it's just as important to think about your life of your book. Right now, last thing I'll say on this, I know I'm going on this topic, but right now I have a book, a chat book, like a little book coming out in 2024. And right now I'm trying to figure out the cover. And so I'm working with the publisher. This is coming out through Black Lawrence Press, and they do great work and they have great covers. And that back and forth about what a cover should look like is hugely important. And that's what my students are doing with clients. And that's what my students are doing with authors. And they're learning that process of like, what will sell? And they're doing market reports. So like, how does this fit on a shelf with other things like it? So sorry, I went off, but it's like, it's
No,
so
I
fun.
love
Like
it.
they love it.
Yeah, and I can tell your energy is contagious. I mean, it's really great. I mean, I can see how these students, why they like you so much. I mean, it's your energy is great. So, where do you find the time to do like you? So you're putting out this book is your book coming out,
Yeah.
and you've written other books.
Yeah.
It's what a balance. But I mean, it also goes to one of those things like as a student, when you see somebody taking action and doing these things, it's inspiring. It's like exactly what you want in a teacher, you know,
Yeah.
which is really cool. What are your students? What do you see them going on to do? Like with everything that they're learning, like is there a trajectory that a lot of these kids want to go on, or are they?
I think it's been interesting this. So we have like one of the other things that snaps into place with this is we have new programs get started right around the same year as the press. But not intentionally, it just happened to around 2019. That's the BFA in Writing and Applied Arts. And that's a program that I made up, seeing all of these cool things that we could do and then clustering it and making a distinctive program. I'm just going to crow a second. It is the only BFA in writing in UW system. Thank you. So I'm like, yeah, Green Bay. But we have like now we've been able to hire into it. Oh my God, it's so great. So that means that the trajectories are still being formed. So from the original sort of version of that degree, our first graduate, we were able to use a lot of existing curriculum to have a lot of transfers, and then existing students, we could graduate kind of soon with that program. We didn't have to like have several years before someone graduated. That first graduate went on to work for one of the top 5
Oh,
publisher people in New York, and lived in New Jersey. I mean, it was nuts. I mean, and she's like kind of a very special student, right? But she was one of these people that for a little while in that time, I was also one of the people who organized Untitled Town Book and Author Festival, which was a massive book festival here in town and took a ton of time. And I'm happy to have put that down, but it was really great while it lasted. While I was working with it, I should say. And so she had done a lot of that work. She was just kind of this, she was editor of Sheep's Head, like she worked on the press, like she just did all these things. The interesting part of this is she got out there, dream job. And this is what I thought every student should be like, let's aim for whatever they're called, whatever consortium of publishings out there on the East Coast. And she didn't like it. And she said she felt there was a sort of appalling lack of diversity, and which has been commented on this is like a big topic in publishing and United States publishing, total lack of diversity up, on levels.
yes.
She is a Caucasian American, right? But she has dark hair. And she said she was like the quote, like sort of most ethnic looking person on any Zoom call because everyone was blonde as well. And they were very like went to a lot of the same schools and like had all this stuff. And she just was like this kid from Green Bay or Wisconsin. And she didn't love it. And so that surprised me because I thought that's what we were building our students to do. And then for her to be like, I don't love this and I'm not making a ton of money. I'm going to come back to Wisconsin and write my ticket in Milwaukee and do a job somewhere else working for some other kind of thing. So what that taught me, I know it's just one student, but it was really useful. So what that taught me was, you know, we need to give students opportunities if they want to go into editing and publishing. There are some Wisconsin publishers out there right now that like there's this Orange Hat Publishing down in I'm gonna mess it up, Wausau, something like that. Where they're doing they like need interns, they need people, and I would love it if someone became a book designer for them, or if they went to just a state over in Minneapolis, like Minnesota, or excuse me, Minnesota. Minneapolis has a ton of like incredibly well-regarded presses. But beyond that, this BFA in writing now has 4 emphases that are just coming out this year, and one of them is game writing. And so, what if they want to do game development, game writing, and we have now, instead of just the one course that does Sheepshead Review or the other course that does the teaching press, we also have a video streaming course that you can like learn. You're on Twitch or doing whatever it is. That's always something I kind of wave my hands like the game things because I don't really understand any of it. But they're learning they build their own games. They've just done an app that when you walk around our campus, and it's like a Pokemon Go, when you aim your phone and your camera at particular QR codes, they're looking at it's in conjunction with First Nation studies. So it's like the land acknowledgement and what was this campus like before when the First Nations peoples were here. And so you can compare your phone to like what you're looking at. So and then we also have a professional writing emphasis, which means that those students and the person who's in charge of that just as always, he's working with AI stuff right now, and he's trying to figure out how that works with that major, which is fascinating, or that track, which is fascinating. And he's interested in like, how do you write for virtual reality? Like if you are trying to train people on a machine or you're a company and you need to use, how do you do the writing for that? So it's like, it's all over the place. And so I'm so happy because if I had been constantly trying to prepare students for a specific thing and they didn't like it, or they found it to be exclusionary or hard to get into, then I think we'd have a really hard time. But what I like is our program offers a lot of options for hopefully you can achieve a professional level. And I will also say, last thing, the reason I did the press, one other reason was all of these position advertisements for jobs were asking for 3 to 4 years experience to even get through the front door. And I was like, well, how the heck are you going to get that if you are graduating? So my hope was to build up some professionalism, at least a couple years, take students from being on staff to being an editor to being a project leader or a team manager or whatever it was that they're doing, so they could have some footing when they got out to do whatever they wanted.
Man, that is so cool. I mean, just hearing you talk, even like, I've always found it fascinating. Like as I've grown, my professional career, etc. You find out like the people who usually end up on stage or get a lot of there's this thing called personal branding now, right? It's been there for however long, and it's so easy to overlook when you're a young person. But having that knowledge set, I don't care what you go into, to be able to share that knowledge in some form, to be able to write and kind of understand the logistics of putting yourself out there is so powerful.
Yeah.
You think of all the different avenues, like you're talking about gaming, but even for me, like I love beautiful design of anything, packaging, it doesn't matter what it is. I'm a sucker for it.
Yep.
And it's, now a lot of these brands over the last, I don't know, it's been forever now, real kitschy, fun ways that they talk about. It could be like a soap brand, but the way they talk about the brand is, that's an art form. And I think a lot of young people don't think about like, that's writing, and then if you're really good at that by chance, you could write a book on, on that. And then the next thing you know, your career explodes. Like it's
or you
It's
can just make a ton more money than writing a book. I mean, making money off of books. Let me tell you a little about something about that. It's kind of hard. But like you could just be an exceptional social media manager. Like,
yeah,
and we aren't like, I will say that the BFA, because it's a BFA, it's meant to have sort of a more fine arts thing, component to it. So there's more of an emphasis on craft. We have a really great communications program. We're beginning to kind of work more with them, but for a while we were like, we're the creative, right, and they're the, like, they're the
yeah,
skills, we're the art, right? And I really do think that that's a false kind of, like, people need to, you're not going to necessarily go out and say, I'm going to write a novel, hire me to write a novel. Like, those things don't really necessarily go together. But what I'm so fascinated by, like, as I like, so for better or for worse, I'm on Twitter still, right? And I love Twitter, and I'm really bummed about all the ways that Twitter just is about Twitter these days. I'm like, all right, all right, all right. Let's just go back to the stuff that I loved, which is kind of happening upon things. And I love it when there are like brand accounts like Doritos or Mount St. Helens or like whoever. And they're like doing the tweets on behalf of that. There was this British Museum of Rural Life, right? And like, who even cares, right? Like, why on earth would I ever know about that? But because of Twitter, and because their posts or tweets were so funny, and they would like find a picture from the archives of like a gigantic sheep, and they'd be like, big chunk today or whatever, and it'd be like this massive thing from their archives, and then suddenly it's like all over, and you're like, that is smart. Like, people want to now go to the British Museum of Rural Life in God knows where, right? Because of the social media profile they've built. And if you go back to writing terms, they've kind of built a character, right? They have a certain kind of way that they represent themselves. They're funny. They're self-deprecating. They'll show you. They know that you don't really care maybe that deeply about like barn doors, but they'll do a post on it, right? And that's the kind of thing I know the word engagement is thrown around a lot, but I truly mean it. And like, it's engaging. It's like talking to a fascinating person or like somebody funny. You want to spend time there. And I think
sure.
that's something to learn that. And I also think one of the things you're pointing out too is, on the flip side of that, it is extremely hard to get to that level immediately. And so that's the part that I really wish. I wish there was like an aftercare after you graduate, that there's like a space of 3 or 4 years. And I always encourage people, like, please, let's see your resume. Let's keep talking. Let's like keep helping you. Because I really think, depending on, like, if you're I don't know about UWGB students, I think how they work against other people from other schools, like what people are seeing as they come through. I feel like they may have to do more work and hang out a little longer in order to see some of the same opportunities that a Harvard or a, Boston or somebody like that sees. But that's the part where I wish I could fix that for them right away, or I could help them better, or our program can. And that's kind of something we're going to look into this year, is how can we kind of do more wraparound care? Like, you've graduated, but how are we going to help you, or tell us what you need or what you're finding post university that would be useful for us to help with in some way. So
Man, that's very cool. I mean, I know legacy is something that I think about quite a bit, especially when I'm talking to people like you, and I'm always curious, like, if you think about that, like, now putting in the work that you're putting in. I mean, whether you think about it or not, I mean, you are impacting a lot of people. The ripple effect is significant, like,
yeah.
to say the least. I mean, do you ever think about just kind of what you're actually doing, big picture wise, like the ripple effect and the legacy that you're leaving with your work and all the efforts that you're putting in right now?
Ooh, that's a good one. I don't know. I'm just busy all the time. So it's like, well, and every once in a while I can poke my head up and see things like my joy and love, and also sometimes to a fault, is like starting a new thing, understanding how the infrastructure will work, whether it's a major or working on a book festival or like, a degree or like a press or whatever. And so then when you're in it, you're just like, geez, I made this thing. Now I got to run it. There's all of this sort of stuff. So it's hard to really get like a bigger perspective. I will share with you, because this just made my day a couple weeks ago. So I I have students who were my students a little while ago, like maybe up to 10 years ago. And they are now teachers in Door County, totally separate students, like one's over in this school and one's in another school. And, but I'm still on Facebook because I'm an old person. That's where I go. And so I don't know, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, that's my kids. So like I'm on Facebook friends with them. And one of them shared an article. This just came out. From Door County Pulse or wherever, that was about the two like lit journals in the high schools up there. And both of them had been my students. And one of them literally directly credited Sheepshead Review for this. And they're like, you should see this. And I'm like, oh my God, like seeing that really like, I was like, oh, okay. There's an abstract understanding of how that stuff might work. Like you set it up, you're like, well, hopefully this will all down the road do this thing. But then to have that literally in your own news feed and say, hey, this is what this is impacting with these generations of writers, and this sort of sense of like, I can participate too in art. I can make things and people can see them. That was really cool. I also happen to have a great relationship with one of my very first students who is one of these people who's like went on, and she's so much more successful than I am, like in everything. And I'm like, great, and I mean, I get mad a little bit, but she's a poet, so I can handle it. I'm like, that's okay, poet. And that, which is actually honestly harder, I think, for what she's doing. She's amazing. And she touches base with me a lot. And she's also very sweet, like very kind. She's also like, if it weren't for you, and then there's another professor who's not at our university anymore, who's fantastic, who were very formative to her. And so she's always very grateful. She's always like reminding, and that's nice. I'm not trying to say like I sit here and I'm sad, no one tells me anything. What I'm saying is when those checks come in, they're like, or when those like recognitions come in, they're usually individual and they're fantastic. And that's great. I love seeing that, right? Like that makes me feel like, okay, we are having an effect on something. Seeing we have a new beautiful new space in on campus, on the Green Bay campus, called the Center for Games of Interactive Media. Essentially, it's just an incredibly cool room that in among a bunch of other more sciencey rooms, like light, like learning how to make lights or whatever, like engineering lab stuff, right? And then here's the Center for Games of Interactive Media, which is our game writing people doing their streaming. And when I walk by that and I see people, I have no idea who they are, and they're in there, then I'm like, we're doing it. Or like we just had a global game jam, right? Which is this, the like global event. And then there was like some people that, again, I have nothing to do with this, like, but I helped hire the people who are doing it, and how well attended that is, and how they had all these, and they all made a game in 24 hours, or they all did different things. That's when you see that. And it's very cool, but it's not like, then it's, and this sounds like ridiculous, like it's not about me, right? Like it's not about like, oh, Dr. Meacham did all this stuff. I mean, that's nice, but that's not how I see it at all, right? Like, because why? Who cares? Right? So yeah.
I mean, I love it. And what you're doing is outstanding. I mean, it's so much fun. I'm enjoying watching it. I'm so glad that I was able to connect with you, and
Yeah.
what you're doing with Seaway. I know we're so proud to be a part of it. But I mean, just watching you guys progress and all the work that you're putting in is so much fun. And for you to kind of see those rewards of people coming back and telling you what they're doing, I mean, it's like I said, I don't want to put too much into it, but being a teacher and doing the type of things that you're doing, it's probably very hard to really wrap your head around the long-term impact that you're probably having, not only on this generation but how they approach the following generation. And it's just a really cool thing. So kudos to you for everything you're doing. It's really great.
Well, I do need to also say, this is my little plug. Seaway's been an exceptional educational partner. We, for a very long time, we had to do this because we're state university. We have to bid out. We have different printers every semester for the 20 years that I've been here. And at one point, I was like, I want to work with somebody local who has like great values and is generous with their time. And we got a tour of Seaway, like, again, I want to say like 2010, or a really long time ago. I had a great managing editor on Cheapset that's like, let's go see. And it was transformative. Like even having the students be able to tour Seaway, they're just, it's like the Willy Wonka chocolate factory of print. And it's really exciting to like watch the machines and all this stuff. And they love it. And We've been really lucky to be able to have such a good relationship with our printer and learn that we don't know how to solve a problem. We can reach out and say help, and right away somebody is saying, this is what you want to do with your gutter. This is what you want to do with the publication, and it's been extraordinary. So we are very happy to be working with CUA as well.
Well, thank you. I can say, we're just really proud to be a small part of your story,
Well,
and
thank you.
it's great, and it's again, it's one of the the best things for me in doing this, and my role at Seaway is just connecting with people like you. It's a real pleasure.
Well, thank you. It is for me. It is for me and my students as well. So
Well,
yeah,
thank you so much for spending the time, and I'm sure we'll be in touch.
excellent. Thank you.